Hey guys, Vlad here with AVT-Astro. So it's finally happening. Star parties are back in full force after the pandemic. For those of you that might not be familiar, I run a little Astro blog called AVT-Astro.com. And of course this YouTube channel, so if you're not subscribed, please do consider subscribing. So anyhow, on to the topic of the video. I am registered, ready to go to a star party for 3 nights. Out in Central Oregon under a Bortle 1 sky. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about with the Bortle thing, look it up on Google. But basically, Bortle 1, that's as dark of a sky as it gets. I'm really excited. This place is in the middle of nowhere. Probably going to be a lot of bugs. Nothing to do there. But it's as pristine of a sky as it gets. Now, recently, what kind of inspired me to make this video? Recently, we had a virtual astronomy club meeting, and one of the guys there, kind of asked, he was going to his first star party, I think, and he kind of asked, what kind of equipment he should bring, what kind of things to consider. So, I am not having an astronomy garage sale. I'm actually getting ready for the star party. I've got all my equipment laid out. So, I'm going to kind of just, walk you through the process of how I get ready for star parties, to make sure that I bring everything that I need. I mean, I've been to quite a few, so, I kind of know what you need out there. Let's check it out. All right, guys, so here we go. Where do we start? Do we start with the little stuff or with the big stuff? Let's start with the big stuff. Cameras are already pointing this way. Okay, so the way that I like to get ready for a star party, right? This is actually one of the scopes that I'm bringing with me. The other one over there is hiding out, but you guys will see that one later. Basically, the way that I like to do this is I like to set up my gear right just the way that I'm going to be using it, and that way I'm pretty sure I don't forget anything. Okay, even though most of the stuff I've used multiple times, but so I'll set up. So normally I bring my astronomy chair with me all the time, right? So this guy, I'm already sure I'm not forgetting anything because I've got the mount, I've got the scope, I've got, this is actually the battered Herschel wedge, but I made sure that I brought a regular star diagonal. So for this star party, I'm using a 2-scope system. This is going to be my wide field instrument and solar scope to use during the day when I'm really bored. That's going to be the 24-inch Dob, my primary scope, which is already set up normally the way that I'd use it. So anyhow, I set it up. Make sure I have everything. The other thing that I'd recommend, if this happens to be your first time using the gear, or or having it out, if it's like a new scope too, you really should use it once before you take it to a star party, hopefully. If you just have no idea, what the heck you're doing, chances are the star party is going to have some cool people there that will help you out. Usually astronomy people are pretty nice. All right. So, kind of moving on. So, one thing that, I almost kind of forgot this, step stool. So, for my big scope, right, I need both a step stool and a chair, right? So, you really just kind of have to think through how you're going to be using the equipment, okay? So, that's one thing that I almost forgot. Just kind of give you an idea. All right. So yeah, this is my main eyepiece case. This isn't stuff that I kind of assemble for the star party. This is normally kind of how it hangs out. I've got my filters here, all my eyepieces, binocular and stuff like that. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I almost forgot the regular star diagonal because I've got the Herschel wedge for observing the sun and the wide field scope. So again, think through how you're going to be doing the observing. Make sure you've got everything in your eyepiece case. Moving on to this case. This is the case that I have set up for my large Dob. It's got all this, gizmos that I need to both set it up and to run it. So this is usually good to go. Again, once I'm, breaking that scope down to load it up into the trailer, I am going to look through this, make sure everything's there. Now, you might have noticed this cool stuff here, right? You're like, why do I need a racket wrench to go to the star party? I actually put this here just to remind myself to talk about certain things. Okay, so tools. Again, this kind of goes back to thinking through the process of how you're going to be setting up your scope. What adjustments could it need? Like, is the mount going to need any of these, you know, like screws potentially tightened? If you're going, you know, somewhere close, if you're only like half an hour away from your house, you know, who cares? Like, if, you know, if your stuff goes bad, not a big deal. I'm going for, you know, 3 nights. This is like a 3.5 hour drive for me. Okay. So, I mean, I need to make sure I've got everything. This is the middle of nowhere. I mean, that's why it's dark there, because it's the middle of nowhere. So I need to bring everything, you know, that I'm absolutely going to need. So tools, make sure you bring all the tools that you're going to need to potentially, you know, adjust whatever you might need on your scope, okay? So kind of think through it. If you've never used the scope before, obviously that's going to be kind of tough. You know, if you've had the scope for years, I mean, chances are you know what kind of, you know, like things that might need adjusting. So bring tools. All right, moving on. Extra batteries. That's why I have a battery here. You know, all your flashlights, your scope, red dot finders, they all have batteries in there. Make sure you have extra batteries for all of those. Again, especially if you're going for a multiple night. For a one-nighter, probably not a big deal, but honestly, I've been to plenty of star parties to where I get there. I love red dot finders, and my red dot finder battery is dead, and then I am not having a really amazing time observing because I can't find stuff really easily. All right. So this is a collimator that I have. So bring, you know, make sure, you know, this kind of goes back to this case, the section normal lives in there. Make sure that you have a way of aligning your optics if the scope needs it. Like for instance, if you have a refractor, you don't need to do that. If you have an SCT, you don't really need a special tool. If you have a Dob, you do need a special tool. And the reason that I mention this is because I've actually done this. I forgot my collimation tool when I went to a multiple night star party, and you know, I was able to borrow one, thankfully, but you know, bring down. All right, so flashlights. You need a red flashlight. We'll kind of get into the rules of star parties usually, but if red flashlight is a must. White light, it really ruins people's night vision. People are not going to be happy with you if you're using a flashlight that is not an astronomy one. And an astronomy one, you'd want a red one, preferably an LED one. Eye patch, I've talked about this in previous videos. I love them to kind of cover your non-observant night, or maybe even your observant night, not to ruin your night vision. If you're, you know, going to be exposed to some white light, this is a cool thing. Love it. Okay, so next thing, you're like, what is this? Well, it's a hat, right? And so I'm posting in the weather for the star party right now, or the predicted weather anyway. As you can see, it's still summer, right? It's pretty hot. I am going to bring all my winter clothes, okay? Like everything that I'd normally wear in the winter. You'd be surprised, especially if you're observing somewhere like in the desert, the mountains, it's going to get cold down there, especially like, you know, like after it's like 12 or so. I mean, it gets cold. I can almost guarantee it. I've been to a few star parties to where I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt the whole time. Most of the time, man, I'm like wearing, you know, like a good hat and, you know, a coat by the end of the night. Okay, so, you know, by all means, bring way more clothes than you think you will need, because chances are you will need it. Okay, so clothes is very, very important. If you're not warm, you're not gonna have a really good time observing. All right, so at the filming of this video, we're still at the tail end of the pandemic. Again, this is, you know, we just started resuming our star parties with the astronomy club. You know, I'm gonna bring a mask. You know, mask mandates are already all dropped and stuff like that. This was actually, you know, the reason I'm even kind of bringing this up, this was kind of asked, you know, like by that gent, you know, on the astronomy meeting, the virtual one that we had. You know, what precautions should you take because of COVID? My personal opinion, and this was kind of the consensus of everybody on that call, is that you don't need to like go start wiping down your equipment between people observing. You know, if you're concerned about it, you know, wearing a mask is not a bad idea. Although chances are you're probably going to fog up your eyepiece if you're trying to observe in the mask, because, you know, it kind of blows air up. Yeah, if you haven't had COVID, if you're really worried about it, you know, I'd say, you know, maybe don't even go to star parties, you know, for now. I mean, it is a serious thing, you know, unfortunately, like I actually lost my father to COVID, so, you know, it's a serious thing. I'd say if you've already had COVID, you know, chances are you're probably pretty safe. So yeah. Okay, so let's see what's next here. Okay, make sure, this is actually a very important thing. Make sure you have something, some kind of plan for what you're going to be observing, okay? So, I brought some of the articles from Deep Sky Wonders. I'll post in the link of this book. I've recommended in the past. It's a great book. For what I'm going to be planning on observing, okay, and I've got somewhere back here, I've got my observing logs and stuff. You know, so hopefully I'm going to do some sketching, that type of deal. I actually have a cool red LED here to where, you know, and I've got my little sketching supplies here. But anyway, make sure you have a plan of what you're going to observe. There's been plenty of star parties to where, like, you know, I'd show up in the past and I'd be like, oh yeah, I know all these cool objects that I want to observe. 2 hours later, I'm just like, oh, like, what's next? Okay, so have a plan for what you're going to observe. All right, and now, not to make this 15 hours long, we are going to get into some of the rules that are generally applicable to star parties and some star party etiquette. All right, back on the chair and drinking coffee. I'm gonna get that out of the way. Anyway, so this is an email that we got from our VP of Observing about the star party. I'm not gonna share the email or anything like that because it's not mine to share. But it's got the rules for the star party. These are, you know, pretty typical rules for star parties. You know, I will say some star parties are, you know, kind of more relaxed. They're kind of more geared towards the general public. Some star parties are really events, you know, like this one at a Bortle 1 Sky, right? It's made for those hardcore observers, right, to go and get a truly, absolutely dark, you know, sky viewing experience. So it kind of depends on the star party. I'm going to talk about this one. You know, if you follow the rules for this one, chances are you're going to be fine out in the star party. Okay. So the first thing that it says is arrive before dark. Very, very key thing, especially if you have equipment that, you know, takes a while to set up, don't know how to set up or whatever. Actually, you know, I'll tell a quick story just because, you know, it's kind of a mistake that I did when I was younger. So back when I used to live in Sacramento, I arrived at a star party, I thought plenty early enough. It was already kind of dusk, you know. I mean, it was still definitely not like dark enough to be like really doing any serious dark sky observing, right? And at the time I had a Subaru WRX, like its headlights you can't turn off, you know, it has the daylight running lights are the headlights, right? So I'm pulling into the star party and I had HID headlights. And, you know, I had like literally like 20 people yelling at me. So, yeah, that was a learning experience. Like I thought, you know, I was arriving, you know, early enough. People were already all set up. They're, you know, trying to get dark adapted. So it was a humbling experience, you know. So now I show up nice and early. Like for this particular star party, it says to show up by 4 p.m. It gets totally dark at about like 8 or 8:30, I think, right now. So, I mean, you know, we're talking about hours. And, you know, for me in particular, you know, I've got, you know, a pretty advanced setup, so I'm going to need that time. So I'm going to show up by 4 p.m. or something. So very important. Show up early. Okay? And then that way, you know, you kind of like, even once you get your gear set up, you can mingle with people, talk with people, just kind of, you know, get used to their... Okay, so the next thing that it's talking about, kind of going back to the same type of thing, is to make sure that your car, you know, whatever type of lights it has, do not turn on at night, okay? It's hyper annoying when somebody goes into their car to, like, you know, go get their, you know, like observing book or whatever, right? And they click the clicker and then all the lights on the car turn on and then, you know, starts like, you know, flashing all this stuff. Because, you know, we're just used to doing that, right? And during the day, it's fine. But at night, it's hyper annoying, and you're not going to have very happy fellow observers. So whatever lights it has, make sure they're out. You know, practice it the night before. You like go out there and see, like if you click, like if you open just the door, will the lights come on? You know, figure out a way of turning them on. If you can't, you know, figure out a way of turning it on, some people will just take like literally like black paper or something like that, and they'll just, you know, like painters tape it over the lights or whatever. Perfectly fine. I mean, you know, you know, as long as they're not coming on, it's all cool. Some more stuff about lights. So it's saying if you have like a camper or whatever, make sure there's no white lights in it. You know, basically back to the same thing. More stuff about flashlights. You know, like even if you do have an astronomy flashlight that's red, make sure it's dim. You know, so yeah, so you're not ruining people's night vision. Okay, so morning times or quiet times. So usually, you know, depending on the start party, if it's like a multiple night one, I mean, people are usually staying up pretty late, right? So in the morning time, you know, don't get up at like 7 a.m. and, you know, like start making a bunch of noise, right? Because, you know, chances are if I stayed up observing until like 3, 4 in the morning, you know, at 7 a.m., I mean, that's like, you know, when I'm in my deep sleep, all right? So, you know, yeah, so don't be loud. It talks about children and pets. You know, if you have young kids, if you have pets, chances are don't leave them. Like RVP actually said to leave pets just, you know, because first of all, they could be like a noise issue. Second of all, they could, you know, I mean, you know, there's $1,000, you know, equipment, you know, just sitting around, right? You know, what if it goes up and chews up, you know, like somebody's cables or, you know, whatever. Or if they're leashed, you know, they might go and like knock over a scope. I mean, I love pets, but they might not be appropriate to bring to a star party. Again, that kind of depends on the star party too, but typically, I mean, I've been to quite a few. Usually people don't bring pets just in general, or kids. And I have kids, okay? All right, so it talks about smoking. Says, you know, like for this particular one, we're in the dry season, so it talks about really not smoking unless you're in your vehicle. Really kind of more of a fire hazard. And then, you know, speaking about fires, I mean, be very, you know, cautious or, you know, like minded about that because, I mean, for most star parties that we go to here in Central Oregon, or we're essentially in a grass field that's as dry as bone. I mean, there's, you know, you throw a match in there and it'll light right on fire. So anything that could even potentially cause a fire, you got to be really cautious about that, and you know, yeah, you don't want to burn the place down. All right, so I think that, yeah, so that kind of covers all the, you know, like general guidelines that we had for this star party. Some other stuff that I'll kind of, you know, mention, you know, one of the coolest things about going to a star party is mingling with other people, you know, trying out their equipment, that type of deal. You know, be courteous to other people. Don't just like, you know, walk up to their scope and, you know, like start taking a look through, you know, like introduce yourself, ask them if it's cool, you know, if you could take a look through their scope, or if they're doing astrophotography, definitely don't touch their stuff because you're going to ruin their exposure. So yeah, so first, you know, like kind of talk to people, you know, and usually most people, like if they're doing visual, they'll offer you a view of whatever they're looking at. So yeah. So this will kind of conclude the section of getting ready to go to a star party. Again, just, you know, to sum it up, think through your equipment, think about how you're going to be using it. Hopefully actually practice using it at home to make sure you don't kind of forget anything, especially if you're going to a multi-night star party. So yeah, I'll, you know, probably post in some clips from the star party and that type of deal. So it's really windy out here. I'm gonna do a voiceover for the video.